All right. Thanks everybody for joining this talk. So I'm going to talk. It's not going to be a very technical talk. It's more a bit about open source, the Apache Software Foundation, and I also try to encourage you to contribute to Apache Flink. So just as a heads up here. So, a few words about myself. My name is Fabian. I'm a Flink PMC member with the project since the very early days. And I'm also one of the co-authors of this book here. The Chinese translation will be released very soon. I've been told that it's probably coming out next month, so be prepared. And I'm also a co-founder and software engineer at America. So much about myself. What I'm going to do in this talk is talk a bit about the Apache Software Foundation, which is the home of Apache Flink. Tell you a little bit about the core principles of the Apache Software Foundation, also commonly called the Apache Way, and share a little bit how Apache projects are managed. So who's in charge of the project, who's making decisions, who do Apache projects relate to each other, and these things. I'll share a little bit about Apache Flink's history, so how the project started and how it became what it is today. And finally, let you know a few ways how you can contribute to Apache Flink. Alright, first, the Apache Software Foundation. The Apache Software Foundation is the largest open source organization of the world. It hosts hundreds of projects, so right now the counter is by something 300 plus projects and sub-projects. Many of these projects are in incubating status, which means they're currently in the progress of onboarding in the Apache Software Foundation, so they're trying to build a community and establish community processes that are aligned with the Apache Software Foundation. The whole organization has about 7,000 committers, so people who have access to the repositories of the different projects. It is run by, or there are about 730 members, and everybody's contributing voluntarily to this organization. So pretty much everybody in the Apache Software Foundation is a volunteer. I think, if I'm not mistaken, there might be one or two people who are paid in the overall organization, but basically everybody is a volunteer in this organization. In the last year, 2018, so it's a little bit outdated by now, about 3,000 committers changed almost 80 million lines of code. And you see, especially in the big data ecosystem, there's like a really large amount of projects that are part, or that are Apache projects, including Kafka, Spark, Storm, HBase, PAC-P, Hadoop, so many of the names that we heard people talking about this morning. So what is the mission of the Apache Software Foundation? The Apache Software Foundation, the mission of the Apache Software Foundation is to provide software for the public good. We do this by providing services and support for many like-minded software project communities of individuals who choose to join the ASF. So I think the first sentence is the most important one. So the idea is to provide software for the public good. Basically software that everybody can use and use for their own advantage. The ASF is a non-profit organization, which means the organization does not make any money, although there's many. The organization has several sponsors that donate money to the Apache Software Foundation, and it is also strictly vendor neutral, which means that everybody is invited to participate in an Apache project, and you cannot really buy influence by donating to the Software Foundation. The core mission, or what the Software Foundation does, it basically provides an infrastructure and legal framework for different open source projects. So this foundation gives, for instance, infrastructure such as a bug tracker, repositories, mailing lists, basically all the infrastructure that an open source project needs, but also gives legal guidelines and protection if the projects, given that the projects follow the guidelines of the Software Foundation. So, what is the Apache Way? The Apache Way is basically the core set of principles that all Apache projects are following. And there's a couple of basic principles here. The first one is community over code, which basically means that it is more important to ensure that a community is healthy than basically the community of a project is the most important asset. If the community is struggling, if the community is not healthy, if it is if the members are leaving this community, then even the best software or the software that is developed with the highest quality standards is not worth a lot, because if there's no community, there's nobody who's going to maintain the project, and the project is essentially dead. So that basically means that the community is really the most important thing that the Apache project should worry about. And this also includes that, of course, non-code contributions, what these code contributions are, I'll talk about later, are also valued a lot. So it's not only important to contribute code to an Apache project, but there's lots of different other ways how you can contribute, and these are equally important. Another core principle is that projects decisions are done by people who contribute to the project. So there's you have to be active in the community. When you are active and contributing, you also got to say in which direction the project should evolve. So whoever is contributing to a project should also be invited to be able to have a say in where the project is going. Important here as well is that everyone acts as an individual. So the voice of every person basically counts just as one. All decisions and discussions are happening on open, publicly accessible mailing lists. The mailing lists are also archived, which means you can always go back and search what has been said before. And the goal here is that decisions are done by consensus. Often there's when people are in their different proposals, usually all these there's some discussion going on, but the goal should be that after having technical discussions, everyone kind of settles down on a consensus. The software that is developed in an Apache project belongs to the Apache Software Foundation and is released under the Apache license version 2. And this license is a very popular open source license. It's one of the most popular open source licenses, and it's also a very business-friendly license, which means it allows the software to be used, to be commercially used. It also allows that you modify the software. You're also allowed to distribute the software. So this gives companies lots of freedom in how they can use software that is released under the Apache license. There's also a few restrictions, so users cannot hold the Apache Software Foundation or the project itself liable, and also cannot use the Apache trademarks without permission. So those are the core principles of the Apache Software Foundation. As said before, there are many projects in the Apache Software Foundation that are or many projects that are part of the Apache Software Foundation. So what exactly is a project? So first of all, a project consists of a community. So as I said before, the community is the most important asset of a project. You could also say the community is essentially the project. And this community develops open source software. The project is managed by a so-called project management committee, the PMC. And this PMC is basically the one that is responsible to ensure that the project evolves in a healthy way. Every project can have its own community processes and rules. So there is quite a bit of freedom of how a project can govern itself, but all Apache projects need to follow the core principles of the Apache Way that I explained before. And something that some people often find surprising is that all the Apache projects are independent of each other. So every project, even though they're all under the big roof of the Apache Software Foundation, they are each project basically acts alone for itself. So that's also why there have been for some time 10 different stream processing frameworks in the Apache Software Foundation. The Apache Software Foundation doesn't really select or prefer one project over the other. They just give the projects that choose to become Apache projects the infrastructure and room to grow, but every project itself is kind of acting on its own. Often cases, of course, projects have mutual interest or collaborate with each other. The communities often collaborate with each other, but every project, there is nobody really telling, hey, you have to do this, you have to do that. The projects are pretty much independent. So there is in an Apache community, there's different roles that you've probably heard about. There are the users, there's contributors, committers, and PMC members. And I'll explain what these different roles are doing. The users in a Apache project are using the software that is developed by the project, by the community. And they often, what they do is they can ask questions on the mailing list or somewhere else. They're basically mostly using the software and are interested in solving their needs. Contributors are people who actively contribute and help the community in whatever way. There's different ways how you can contribute. You can contribute source code. You can also contribute documentation. You can report bugs when you're a user of the software and you encounter a bug or something that does not work as you would expect it, and you make a proposal or report a strange behavior. That is already a contribution to the project because you're helping the project to improve. You can answer user questions if you're following the project, the user mailing list, and you see somebody's posting a question and you know the answer, and you say, hey, how about you try this? This is also a contribution to the project because you're again helping somebody else to solve a problem. Participation in discussions. You see there's a discussion about a feature going on that I'm interested in. I want to share my perspective, why this feature is important, why I think the feature should be solved in this way or the other way. This is also helping the project and also an important contribution. You can also give a talk about the project like I'm doing right now, or many other people here at the conference. This is also a contribution to the growth of the project. You can write a blog post, you can talk about the project in social media. All of these are kind of already contributions that help grow the project. The next step, in another role in the project, are committers. Committers basically have access to the source code repository of the project, so those are the ones who are able to actually change software. They can merge the contributions of other community members, and the way to become a committer is basically to earn the merit. Basically, if you're contributing enough over a longer period of time, then the program management committee will or should recognize these contributions by asking you whether you would like to become a committer or not. Yeah, and all committers also have an Apache or Apache email address. And finally, there's the PMC members. Those are the ones, as I said before, the project management committee is responsible for the health of the project, so they should see what is happening on the development mailing list, on the user mailing lists. Are there any issues that need to be addressed? They also need to make sure that what is happening within the community is following the Apache Way. PMC members are also the ones that can vote on releases, or where the votes on releases are binding. Everybody is welcome to test a release and help verifying that a release candidate is working correctly, but only the program committee member votes are actually binding. They are also the ones who can elect new committers and also new PMC members. And another important aspect here for the PMC members is that they're also obliged to protect the trademarks of the project and the software foundation. All right, so much for what is the Apache Software Foundation, how do Apache projects, what exactly is an Apache project. And now I'll step a bit more into Apache Flink. How did Apache Flink actually become an Apache project? So all of this started like 10 years ago, in 2009. It's been a long time since then. Back in that time, there was an academic research project called Stratosphere that was started in Berlin, in Germany. And the mission back then was to develop the next generation big data analytics platform. Initially, this was Stratosphere was designed as a batch processing system, so kind of like a hybrid of a relational database and MapReduce. It only later became a stream processing or a stream processing framework. But so we started in 2009. By the end of 2013, the PhD students that were working in this research project were about to finish. So one of them was Stefan, who gave the keynote this morning. I was another one. And so at that point in time, we kind of like had a, back then, state-of-the-art system. Well, it was maybe not production ready, but the core ideas and techniques that were used in this system were back then state-of-the-art, and it also had a couple of unique features. So we thought, okay, it makes sense to not abandon the project, but carry on what we did for the last 4 years. So, and that's why we decided to donate the code to the Apache Software Foundation. So in April 2014, we donated the code to the Apache Software Foundation, and Stratosphere became Apache Flink incubating back then. And all these Stratosphere developers, or like the PhD students and master students that were working on the project, became initial committers in the project. So many of the people that you might know from the mailing list, like Robert, Alyosha, Till, were already active back then, and did the step from academia into the Apache Software Foundation. And since this was a research project, we had also lots of collaborations with other European universities going on. So there were students in Stockholm working on this software, other students from Budapest in Hungary, and so we were quite lucky that these people were all contributing to Flink already, so we had the opportunity to really start growing a community right from the start. So where other projects often had problems finding people who would start contributing to the project, we had already many people who were interested in really developing and expanding the project. So this really helped us to learn how to grow a community, how to include people in the development process, make them committers, and already like almost a little bit more than half a year later, end of the year 2014, Apache Flink graduated from the incubator and became a top-level project. So I had already said that Flink or Stratosphere back then were more like a batch processing system. That was still true when we donated the code into the Apache Software Foundation. Our initial focus of the project was actually on building the next generation machine learning, or a system to do machine learning. One of the very good features of Stratosphere back then, and still today, was that it is able to do very fast iterations over large amounts of data, something that you obviously need to if you want to train machine learning models. However, Apache Spark had gained a lot of popularity, but already was a very, like, Apache Spark joined the Apache Software Foundation about 1 year earlier, and had already grown a very strong and big community around these kinds of use cases, machine learning. So it was really difficult to pitch Apache Flink and convince people that Flink should be the right system for these kinds of use cases when everybody else was using Spark. So in mid-2015, we therefore, or the community, somewhat decided to shift the focus of the development from machine learning batch to real-time stream processing. Flink had already quite a few interesting capabilities in this space. There was already the very first version of the data stream API available back then, but a lot of the really interesting features that make Flink such a great stream processor that it is today were not there yet. So there were no checkpoints, there was no exactly once processing, there was no event time support. So all of the core features that are really interesting for our users were not developed back then. However, we then started to implementing these features. As I said, proper event time support with watermarks, consistency guarantees with checkpointing, save points to stop and resume your application, and so on. All these nice features that basically allowed stream processing to provide or to compute, to be used for mission critical applications where you were not interested in approximate results, but you really wanted to have guaranteed correct results. So all of this was developed after 2015, and so we've been we were developing these features continuously, but by about late 2016, so about 3 years ago, we noticed that people really understood what we were doing, and more people were starting to use Apache Flink. Among these early users were Alibaba, Netflix, and Uber. And if you have if you manage to attract one of some of the big users, then others will follow. And this is also something that we experience. So from that point in time on, Flink, the Flink community started to grow even faster. Today, Apache Flink has more than 800 contributors identified by unique email addresses. So if some of you are a contributor with 2 email addresses, we count you twice. But anyway, you see we've got a steady growth there. We have 51 committers, 26 PMC members. it was already said this morning, last year Flink had the most active user mailing list of all Apache projects, so the most active list of all the 300 plus projects. We are releasing a new version about every 3 to 4 months. And yeah, some of the world's most demanding stream processing applications are running on Apache Flink. These are some of the logos that are of companies that are using Apache Flink today. I notice this looks very different from the logos that we've seen this morning. I took those from the Apache Flink website, so those are the companies that kind of like gave us permission to put their logos on there. If your company is also using Apache Flink, it is not on here, please reach out to me. I'm happy to add more logos here. I noticed there's quite a few that we could add this morning, so if you're interested in that, let me know, and we'll can grow this page a little bit. All right, so now I'm going to talk about how you can contribute to Apache Flink. So, as I said before, there's many ways to contribute to an open source project, and to also, of course, to an Apache project. And this, I find, contributing to open source is fun, rewarding, and you also can learn a lot. However, sometimes you also need to need a bit of patience, especially in a project that is like undergoing such growth as Flink today. If a project reaches a certain size, it's also kind of important to first understand how contributing in such a project works, that you know what are the processes to follow, because just opening a pull request with a new feature will probably not work. If it's a bug fix, it should work. However, if it's like a nice new feature that you think would be useful for others, and you just open a pull request, is something that is will probably not work. These things, when you reach a certain size, require a bit of preparation and discussion. Contributors, I said before, when talking about the different roles in a project, earn the merit to become committers, or can earn the merit to become committers if they contribute over a longer period of time. And this is probably the link that is important here. It's the Flink bylaws that basically explain how to what the steps are to contribute. So there's different ways to contribute. I think the one that is probably the easiest, or where you can the one with that requires the least effort, is contributing to user support. So this includes answering user questions on the mailing list, helping them to solve their problems. Flink has two mailing lists. The user at apacheflink.org email list, which is the mailing list for English-speaking users, and there is a users -ZH that is for Chinese-speaking users. So we have a dedicated list for Chinese users, where you can also reach out either for help or to help others. These email lists have quite a bit of traffic, so we see like something 150 emails per week, and there's many people subscribed. So if you have a question, don't hesitate to post your question there. And if you want to help, please subscribe and see if there's a question where you can help somebody who has some problem with Apache Flink. There's also many questions on Stack Overflow under the Apache Flink tag. I'm not sure. Guess maybe there's also a Chinese version of such a question and answer website for coding. If yes, if there's such a website, maybe check if there's also dedicated channel for Apache Flink, and if there's none, maybe create one. Another way to contribute to Apache Flink is to talk about it, to write about it, help spreading the word about Flink on social media, give a talk at a meetup or a conference, write a blog post, record a video, whatever, or organize a meetup. So all these are very good ways to, and also fun ways to help the community, or to help growing the community. Reach out to others, tell them about your experience, share your knowledge. So this is also something that is very, very valuable. And I know there's several people who are active here in WeChat groups or Ding groups, helping others, or organizing meetups as well, or posting their experience or impressions of Flink Forward. So all these things are very, very important. Spreading the word Apache Flink and reaching more people is a very good way to help the community in the project. Documentation is often the weak spot of software projects, especially open source projects. So it's never perfect and can always be improved. There's many tasks in Jira that you can have a look at. So in Jira, in Flink, we organize the Jira as a bug tracker system that we use in Apache. So if you search for the documentation component, you'll find quite a few tasks where you can find something how you can improve the documentation. So this is something that is always very, very valuable. We also have quite a few Chinese resources for Apache Flink. There is a Chinese website, or Chinese translation of Flink's website, and also a Chinese translation of the documentation. The content is typically translated from the English version into Chinese, and therefore also needs to be kept up to date. Whenever the English version changes, not every person contributes to Flink is able to also update the Chinese version. If they are, they typically are encouraged to also update the Chinese version, but if they're not, they usually open a Jira ticket tagged as Chinese translation component, basically as a to-do for forwarding changes that were done on the English documentation to forward them on the Chinese translation of the documentation. So if you're interested in these kinds of contributions, this is of course also very, very important for the project, because you're helping Chinese users and supporting them in having up-to-date documentation available. Contributing to this to developer discussions. I briefly said it before. If you're following all discussions of how Apache Flink should evolve, features that should be added, improvements that should be done, are happening in the public. You can participate, and all these discussions happen on the dev@flink.apache.org email list. All these discussions happen in English, but if you want to participate, everybody is welcome to participate there. And all discussion, and as I said, all design discussions, all feature discussions are happening there publicly. And we're always looking for input from users. So it's kind of hard to design a feature if you know, like roughly know this feature would be nice, but often it's quite challenging to really figure out how the feature should look like in detail. What are the right design decisions? And in these discussions, it's often very, very helpful if users who experience this feature, or who have a demand for this feature, speak up and give their opinion and say, hey, if you're thinking about doing this feature, have you thought about this? I think this feature should also include this part, or this is not so important for me. Really giving input of for how a feature should be designed, how an improvement should be done, or how things can be done better is often very, very important and very valuable. So if you have the time, I know the dev mailing list is very busy and there's lots of discussions going on that probably are not so interesting for you. But if you find a discussion where you think, hey, I can really contribute, I have an opinion on this, and I want to help this feature to be developed in the right way or designed in the right way, then please write an email and tell us your opinion. This is very important to help to get this kind of input. So yeah, and also important, I said we're releasing a new version about every 3 to 4 months. The new version, Flink 110, is coming up soon. I think the feature freeze is happening in a few weeks, which means in the next, it will probably then release, if it's like, we usually give us like one month to finish all the loose ends and prepare the branch for the release. So in about a month or 5 weeks, there probably again will be a release discussion going on. If you have a setup where you can test the new version of Flink, check your workload, see if it works, tell us your problems. So all of these things is very important, because once it is released, and if it doesn't, it's out, and if it's not working for you, you basically have to wait for the next release until we get the possibility to fix it. So if you have a chance, it's really important for us also to if you can give us feedback on a release candidate, if this is something that works for you or not. Contributing code reviews. It's an open source project. Obviously, is related to open source to code. People can make code changes or suggest code changes, opening a pull request on GitHub. We have quite a few pull requests open, unfortunately, so more than we can actually handle. So it's always very helpful if people help to review the code and ensure that the code that is merged into Apache Flink also follows certain quality standards. So everybody is encouraged to review pull requests, not just committers. So committers are the ones who can make the change and actually commit to the repository, but everybody is invited to comment on a pull request. However, before commenting on a pull request, it's often a good idea to check whether this is actually a feature that was agreed on by the community. As I said before, sometimes people open a pull request with a big feature and say, "Here, I implemented something nice. How about you merge it?" But there was no discussion previously going on. If you then start giving detailed feedback about this feature, hey, there is a typo here, this could be done differently, these people are starting to updating their code, putting even more energy in this, and if then the community says, well, actually this is a feature that we don't really see in Flink, then this is a pretty bad experience, because lots of you invested effort, the contributor invested effort, so it's before reviewing a pull request, it's a good idea to really check if this is a feature that the community already agreed to implement. Yeah, code reviews are also very, very important if you want to become a committer of the project, because in order to become a committer, you kind of need to show that you are comfortable with the source code. You know, you're following certain quality standards. So this is something that is that the program committee will definitely have a look at when they discuss about new committers. Contributing a bug fix. I'm almost done. I know there's like lots of ways to contribute. This is like the second last. Contributing a bug fix. Bugs are also tracked in Jira. if you find a bug in the ticket system, either you find a bug yourself that you want to fix. In that case, first open a Jira issue. If you find a bug in the Jira that you want to fix, the first thing to do is to ask a committer to actually assign the ticket to you. This way you can basically show, okay, I want to implement this feature, I'm interested in fixing this bug, and if the fix is more involved, or if it's more complicated to do this fix, then you should also first discuss how you plan to do the fix. So agreeing on the solution, on the rough architecture of the solution before starting to implement it, and then once everybody is on the same page and it's agreed like how this problem should be fixed, then you can start implementing the actual solution, open a pull request, and then this contribution should be accepted by a committer. And finally, contributing a new feature. Actually, this is the contribution that's probably the one that requires most patience, because there's quite a few development threads going on in Flink right now. If you want to contribute a new feature, it's often necessary to somehow align the new feature with the ongoing development efforts. It also requires a discussion on the dev mailing list first, whether to check whether this is actually a feature that that the community wants to have. Oh, I'm running out of time. So, if you want to propose a new feature, first, important, check the contribution first, start a discussion, see consensus in the community, and then once everybody says this is a nice feature, discuss the architecture, how this should be implemented, and then start implementing and going through the pull request reviews. So, in order to become a Flink committer, you need significant and well-done contributions over a longer period of time. You need to show that that you understand the Flink source code, not all parts of Flink, but at least some part of Flink. You need to also show that you can know what you don't know. So this is an important thing. If you're not familiar with certain parts of the code, this is fine. However, then you should also know that you should not merge changes in this part, but rather let that for somebody who knows more about the code. You need good community engagement, understanding how Flink's community processes work, but also the Apache way. And formally, what will happen is that the program management committee has regular discussions about people who contributed to Flink for a significant of time, and then we'll have discussions of who we want to ask to become a committer. To summarize, in Apache projects, community is very important. In Flink, community is also very important. There's many ways how you can contribute to Flink. There's easy ways, responding, helping users on the mailing list, giving a talk, writing a blog post, but also ways that require a little bit more time, like contributing a bug fix or feature. If you want to contribute, check out the community guidelines, and I think working open source is a lot of fun. You get in touch with lots of people, like all of you. Without Apache Flink, I wouldn't be standing here talking to you. I like it. So, all right, that's it.